You ever just wake up and go, "Yeah, I really love Star Wars." I wouldn't blame you if the answer is no, especially these days. In fact, I wouldn't blame you if you woke up and said, "Man, I really hate Star Wars or Star Wars fandom." But I after watching Rogue One, I have to say I just sat there and I went, "Man, I really love Star Wars." What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Access Blockbusters. If you are new to the channel, welcome. In this series of videos, we are rewatching and breaking down all of the live-action Star Wars films, starting from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and going all the way until Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And like I've said in all the other previous videos, and you can check them out on the channel, I've done Star Wars Episodes 1, 2, and 3, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. I am really just trying to be honest here. I'm trying to just see the films as they are and really soak them in as I like them and as I see them. Just trying to be as honest as possible and enjoy them for what they are. And so that's what we're doing in this series. I've done that as successfully as I could, I think, with episodes 1, 2, and 3 and Solo: Star Wars Story. And now here we are with Rogue One. Full spoilers ahead, and again, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to do so. Join the Access Blockbusters group. Give this video a like if you enjoyed Rogue One, or even if you didn't enjoy Rogue One, if you enjoyed the video, give this video a like. And let's get started. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. So I think, actually, that this might not be as controversial of a video as the other ones. I think with all of the other Star Wars movies, there's a little bit of controversy no matter what your opinion is. Like, if I say, like I did, that Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace was enjoyable, I'm sure people would say you're crazy. If I said that Star Wars Episode 2 has some good things in there, I'm sure people would say I'm crazy. I'm sure that by saying that Star Wars Episode 3 is just pretty good, instead of being either amazing or terrible, there are people on both sides that are going to call me crazy. And by me calling Solo: A Star Wars Story pretty good, I'm sure that people are going to be yelling at me. However, I think Rogue One is probably the least controversial Star Wars film, at least since the original trilogy, because I think that in general, and if you dislike Rogue One, I respect your opinion 100%. Please let me know in the comments down below, and please give your explanation why. I'd love to engage with you in the comments. But I think for the most part, people really enjoy Rogue One. It's basically on a spectrum of pretty good to amazing. And we'll talk about my thoughts on the film as we get into this video. But before we get into Rogue One, the actual story, I think it's fair that we talk about the context behind the film, just like we did with Solo: A Star Wars Story, because this film also had a little bit of troubled production. Now, unlike Solo: A Star Wars Story, it didn't really derail this film, but I think it could have. It could have, as with any kind of major shakeups during production and things like that. And it wasn't as bad as Solo: A Star Wars Story, but still, I think that it's a miracle that the film works as well as it does. So we'll get into that very, very briefly. For those of you who don't know, the film is directed by Gareth Edwards. And to be fair, it's not like Gareth Edwards was fired from the movie. He still directed the entire film, but there were rumors and heavy speculation that Tony Gilroy, who is, by the way, running the Andor series on Disney+, was heavily involved in either reshooting parts of the film or rewriting most of the film, or basically, I don't know, kicking Gareth Edwards out of the edit bay. These are all just rumors and speculations. I don't have concrete sources for these kinds of things. These are just things that I've heard about over the past few years. So again, if I can be disproven, and if all of these things are false, or if all these things are true, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't the cleanest of productions, right? There were some messy things going on here and there. So we head into Rogue One: A Star Wars Story 2016. We're coming off the high that is Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Star Wars is back, and we get a Star Wars film every year. It's exciting. And this isn't a well, it is a Skywalker saga film, but it's not really part of the main Skywalker part of the Skywalker saga, even though it is very concretely in that timeline, because it takes place literally right before Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. But still, it's not an official episode of the Star Wars Skywalker saga, and that's exciting. So let's get started with the film. And what I will say about the film is this. Before heading into the film, I'm just going to say it right away. This had always been one of my favorite Star Wars films going into this rewatch. I really liked the film when I saw it the first time, and I have continued to like it every time I've seen it since. However, I will say that on this rewatch in particular, the opening half hour scared me a little bit. And the reason is because I think the opening maybe 20 to 30 minutes is actually pretty messy. And I had always seen Rogue One, I had always held it in a very high regard, let's say. And I don't know, it might have just been the fact that I haven't seen the movie in its entirety in a long time, just like I haven't seen a lot of these Star Wars films in their entirety in a long time. So that's, I mean, really, I have a very one-dimensional memory of a lot of these Star Wars films, if you will. And Rogue One to me has always just been amazing. It had always just been very, very good. So when I started watching Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, and the first 30 minutes went by and they were pretty shaky, and we'll talk about why, I actually got a little worried. I thought, oh, maybe I just had hyped up Rogue One too much in my mind, and I just hadn't seen it in a long time, and therefore I had just made it out to be this amazing Star Wars film when it actually wasn't. So the first 30 minutes, I think there are a couple reasons why it's a little shaky. Number one, I think it's a little frantic, and I think it's trying to establish all the characters, which it has to do. But I think that, again, it's just the pacing, right? We're going from planet to planet. There's a planet called, I think it's Wobani, which is a fun anagram for Obi-Wan, which is, I don't know, it's a cool Easter egg. We go to Jeddah. We go to Edu later on. We're on the planet where Cassian kills that intelligence guy, and then we're on Yavin 4. It's very frantic. And again, I don't necessarily blame the film for this, because I do understand that the movie needed to establish all of its characters. You got Cassian Andor, you got Bodhi Rook, you got Jyn Erso, Chirrut and Baze, K2SO, and Saw Gerrera. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. And obviously, of course, the Rebel Alliance with Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, all of them. So it had a lot of heavy lifting to do. And it's hard for me to blame a film like this for kind of struggling under the weight of all that, because we're trying to get to know Jyn Erso. Obviously, the very beginning, the prologue with director Krennic and with Galen Erso, it was important to establish that. Obviously, Saw Gerrera rescuing Jyn Erso, and then them having that contentious relationship as we see later. So there's just a lot of moving parts there, right? And not a lot of it really meshes together well. It's almost like you're jumping from plot point to plot point at the very beginning of the film. That being said, one of the things that stands out to me right away, and this I will continue to talk about in this entire review because it is just so consistent throughout this entire movie, are the visuals. This is one of the single most stunning films I have ever seen. And not just Star Wars films, although it is a gorgeous, gorgeous Star Wars film, but some of the cinematography in this movie is just breathtaking. And it really shows that the cinematographer and the director took the time to just map out the landscape and say, what are some of the most breathtaking visuals that we can provide? And the sense of scale. It's really about scale that makes this film work, because I always say that visuals don't ever really make or break a film, but they can really help or they can really hurt. But they never make or break a film. And while the visuals in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, never really make the film, like go from an A+ to an A++ or that kind of thing, it just enhances the experience in just this intangible way. The way that you see the Death Star throughout the film, the way that you see the AT-ATs throughout the film, the way that you see the ships flying around, it just enhances the scale. So even at the beginning, when Krennic is landing his ships, the film even opens with the rings of this planet, and it just establishes this enormity, this scope that you don't get in a lot of other Star Wars films. Like, you get it really early on in the original trilogy, obviously, with the first shot of the Star Destroyer, and it feels like whoever the cinematographer of this film was, they just took that and ran with it, and it was great. So like I said, we're getting our main characters together. They're all kind of forming this ragtag crew. At the beginning, I think the characters are still kind of nebulous, like they're kind of just there. I think that K2SO obviously stands out the most from the beginning because his character is relatively the same throughout. He's just this sort of snarky but lovable droid. Jyn Erso kind of starts out as a very flat character. I don't think there's a lot to her, but I think that her character grows a little bit. She's not my favorite out of the group. I think that Cassian Andor has a really interesting opening where he kills that person who's trying to give him intelligence. But the rest of them, I don't know. I love Chirrut and I love Baze, but they don't come in for a little bit later, so we'll get to them in a second. And Bodhi, I don't know about Bodhi. I think Bodhi is probably my least favorite out of them. I don't think that Riz Ahmed, who is a brilliant actor, by the way, has a lot to do in the film. And, Saw Gerrera is... Forrest Whitaker is doing something, I guess. And like I said, the first 30 minutes are weird because up until the point where they get to Jeddah, right? And up until the point with... what's the thing's name? Borg Gullet? I think that entire sequence is bizarre. It's very weird. It doesn't really fit well into the Star Wars universe. It doesn't fit well into this film. The whole stuff with Saw Gerrera and Bodhi and Borg Gullet, I was like, what movie am I watching? But I have to say, so at that point, all the characters have met each other. They're all in prison together, and I think that's a really clever device to get them in prison together. Obviously, you see the first test of the Death Star, which is breathtaking. Oh, well, I guess we should talk about Tarkin for a second. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Look, it's noticeable, right? He looks kind of plasticky. That's fine. Like I said, visuals never make or break a movie for me. And so looking at this weird kind of video game-ish Tarkin, it's there and it's not great. And the Leia at the end also not great, but you can just kind of learn to live with it. And I think the presence of the character makes a lot of sense as a foil to director Krennic. So yeah, they test the Death Star on Jeddah. It's just a breathtaking sequence. And I think Ironically enough, as Jedha is destroyed, this is where the film really starts to pick up, because this is where our heroes come together, and this is where their natural conflicts with one another start to really blossom. Because obviously, K2 is sort of following Cassian's orders, but also is just being honest, right? And Cassian has this mission from the rebellion to kill Galen Erso. Well, obviously, Jyn wants to bring Galen home because, well, he's her father, but also because he's the proof that the Death Star has a flaw, right? Like, they all kind of think that Galen is still a separatist, not a separatist, an Empire architect for the Death Star, and they think that he's on the wrong side, so that's why Cassian has his orders to kill Galen. And then you have Baze and Chirrut, who are kind of along for the ride, but I think that they're really valuable additions because they kind of balance out the roster a little bit. Again, this is where I kind of think Bodhi is just kind of there, and he's just kind of being that weird kind of eccentric pilot a little bit. So I don't think Riz Ahmed had enough to do, and that's not his fault at all. I just don't think his character really pops out that much. He's just kind of there to be some sort of connection, I guess, to Galen Erso, but that's about it. But again, it's really that sequence on Edu that this film just picks up and it never lets go. So the sequence on Edu, right, it's again, it's more muted, but it's gorgeous. The rain adds a lot of, I don't know, atmosphere and ambiance, and you have this whole plot of Cassian trying to kill Galen, but Jyn meeting Galen, and then obviously Krennic confronting Galen, all these sort of plot threads coming together, and then the Rebel Alliance sort of bombs Edu. And I think this is really where the film's pace stops becoming frantic, but it becomes more purposeful. It becomes a little bit more driven, right, towards a goal, and I think that works really, really well. And the action sequences, like I said with the other visuals, are just great because it's all about perspective. It's all about the sense of war. It's all about the sense of battle that's going on with the X-Wings flying in and all of the ships blowing up on the Empire's side, and it's just great. And then, well, we have our first scene with Darth Vader. And I mean, what can I say that hasn't been said before about Darth Vader? He's awesome. He's always awesome. I mean, people have said it time and time again. James Earl Jones does sound older in this. He somehow sounds younger in Kenobi. I'm sure that was some, I don't know, voice modulation or something. But in Rogue One, they just kind of let him talk as he is, 80-year-old, 90-year-old, whatever he was. So he does sound a little bit older, a little bit more gravelly, but that's okay. It's Darth Vader, and the scene is great. The dad joke, sure. But yeah, that's how you use Vader, right? I mean, he has to be in this story. If Tarkin's in the story and if it's about the Death Star, of course he has to be in the story. I mean, I almost kind of thought, what if the Emperor showed up, right? Like, I've seen the film before, obviously, but just in my head, I was like, well, if Vader shows up, it kind of makes sense. Maybe for the Emperor would be around, but maybe not. You know, it's fine. And then the rest of the crew, Rogue One, head back to Yavin 4, and they're all talking about it, and I mean, this is where the film really becomes the war film, right? This is where Rogue One puts the war in Star Wars. And this is the last hour of this movie is spectacular filmmaking. It is tense, and the sense of scale, like I said with the visuals, is just impeccable. You have this ragtag group of rebels heading off to Scarif, and they're going to try to get the Death Star plans, and all the rebels are rallying behind them. And I mean, man, it's if you haven't seen the last hour of Rogue One in a while, if you don't want to watch the whole movie, or even if you don't want to watch an hour, like the last, I don't know, 45 minutes of Rogue One, it's just some of the best war filmmaking I've seen in a while. You know, it's like the sense of scale. I keep saying the word scale, and I know it's getting tired, but just the way that the AT-ATs look like beasts. They look like, I don't know, just giant gorillas or ferocious predators roaming around the jungles. And you have the people on the ground. You also have the spaceships in the air during the space battle, and you have them trying to open the gate. And you have the two giant Star Destroyers colliding into one another. And again, you just have these beautiful shots, like this shot of the Death Star that is just looming over Scarif. Whoever did the cinematography for this film just should do all the cinematography for all the films, because the volume is the volume. The volume is the technology that they've been using for The Mandalorian and Marvel and Star Wars and all that sort of stuff. It's sort of a three-dimensional interior set of screens that surrounds you, and you can kind of film within that. I mean, it works for certain things, but I don't know. I mean, there are just some things that I'm sure a lot of these things are CGI in this film as well, but I'm sure a lot of it also were filmed on actual beaches, and you just can't beat it. And this is the point in the film where one by one the crew gets picked off. And the first time I saw this movie, it kind of shocked me, because I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I should have seen that coming, because they don't make it out of this film. I mean, supposedly because A New Hope, you don't see them, but still it just took me by surprise. And yeah, I mean, the character deaths all hit me pretty much, except for Bodhi, but I think that they kind of understand that you're not supposed to feel that much for Bodhi, maybe because his death was pretty quick, but K2, man, just felt so much for a droid. K2, gone too soon. And even and Chirrut walking through to get the switch and Baze going after him later. And I mean, these scenes are just great. I mean, you're not supposed to, at least I didn't, weep your eyes out every single character death, but still it's emotionally impactful because you spent the time with these characters and they mean something to you. And that's really what good storytelling is. Obviously, Jin and Cassian, they get the file and they're confronted by Krennic at the top of the tower. There's one scene though at the top of that tower. One scene, if I had to nitpick here, and I really don't want to, but I did notice this in the film, that felt very reshooty. And what I mean by that is that the lines felt so oddly clunky, and it kind of looked like Ben Mendelsohn was standing in front of a green screen at a certain point. Like it's the scene where he's just talking to Jin, and it's just this cliche dialogue that all of a sudden happens. She's like, "You know who I am. I'm Jin Erso, and you've lost." And I was like, "Oh, this is odd." Like, the movie's dialogue never was this on the nose, so I kind of suspect that it was a reshoot. And we saw in the trailers a while ago, like one of the first trailers for Rogue One, that she was facing a TIE fighter on that bridge or on that tower. So I'm going to assume something was reshot there. It's not a big deal. It's just something that I noticed. And by the way, I have to give big props to Ben Mendelsohn. He doesn't have the most three-dimensional character. I think there are some layers to him, like him trying to fight with Tarkin and Vader and seek his approval and stuff. But you don't really get an insight into the character, which is fine. You know, it's not a big deal. He's just sort of the general, the Empire general, and he's trying to get his project off the ground. And it's kind of sad to see him killed by his own weapon. That's some beautiful poetry, some very sad, beautiful poetry right there. But yeah, and then obviously we get the Darth Vader scene to end out the film, and I mean, I just watched it again and I was giddy. It's kind of weird for me to say I was giddy because he's murdering a bunch of people. It's not in that way, obviously, but this is just sort of the fulfillment of Darth Vader, right? Like, this, to me, before Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, was sort of the bridge between Anakin Skywalker, the one who was committing Order 66 and was on Mustafar killing the Trade Federation, and this is the same Anakin Skywalker in the Darth Vader suit. And it kind of helps bridge him to A New Hope, because obviously you have that scene with the clunky CGI Leia that leads right into A New Hope at the end of the film. And so, I mean, just watching the scene, I'm like, yeah, this is just scary, and it's terrifying, and this is everything that Darth Vader was promised to be in the prequel trilogy, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I'm really glad that we got to see him again in Obi-Wan, kind of be like that again. And that's Rogue One. It's just a beautifully made film. It has emotional stakes, surprisingly, for a group of characters that we haven't met before. The visuals, have I mentioned the visuals? The stakes are there. The ending is just some of the best action I've seen in a Star Wars film. It has genuine sense of scale. It has the feel of a war movie. People are on the ground fighting on the beach. People are in the air, in space. And Rogue One. I mean, if all the Star Wars films could be like Rogue One, I would be so happy. And obviously we weren't that lucky. But still, I love Rogue One. It's not a perfect film. And I guess transitioning into the segment that I always do at the end of these videos of how did my opinion change from the last time I saw this film? Yeah, I mean, I had always held Rogue One in a very high regard, not really remembering a lot of the details of what I liked and what I disliked, just remembering I liked the film very much. And so, the first 30 minutes or so are not my favorite out of any Star Wars movie, in fact, but just the last, 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes are really just some of the best Star Wars I've seen in a long time. And that made me very, very happy. So guys, what do you think of Rogue One, a Star Wars story? Let me know in the comments down below. I know this is a film a lot of people love, but if you don't, then that's totally fine. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. And we are heading right into the original trilogy. I'm super excited for this. To be honest, I haven't seen the original trilogy in a long time. It's been a long time. So I'm really excited to get into it and really just be honest. Because again, I mean, if I don't like A New Hope as much as Rogue One, I'm going to say it. And we'll talk about that next video. Maybe it'll be controversial, maybe not. Maybe I'll love A New Hope even more than Rogue One. We'll see. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for supporting the series. Subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.